So official. All right, welcome. Thanks for joining me. Happy Wednesday. This week is kind of flying by a little fast. I don't know about you all. But yeah, again, today we're just going to take a little bit of time to talk about building habits, especially building the habit around working out and finding the time and making the time. You have a little pumpkin, Rebecca. I love it. Making the time to work out and making the time really for yourself, because this time of year, I actually posted about it today on social media. This time of year can be fairly challenging for folks because of the weather change and the timing, and also just light. Light is very hard to come by. And I know for me, I actually use this time of year to really dial in my sleep habits that maybe I let slip because of the longer days during the summer. So because I am a night owl, but I'm also a morning person, which is not a really good combination, just to let you know, in case some of you don't know what that's like, but maybe some of you do. So I like both, and I tend to have really good creativity at night, especially when like Mondays and Wednesdays, I have the place to myself and it's just me and Milo. And my partner is at Taekwondo, and I can just really just kind of sit and write and create. So I kind of need to get in the habit now of turning it off and making some time and space for myself, but being really diligent about that. So I tend to use the winter and fall months to do that. But I know that the transition with season can really impact everyone differently. Like sometimes we can have seasonal affective disorder. I mean, that is a very real thing. And it's also very real if you start living in a place that's incredibly sunny, like here in Colorado. I know a lot of you here live in Colorado, and it can be very sunny. And if you do happen to go somewhere else, whether it's traveling or living short term, or you just relocate to a place that could be a little bit gloomier, um, it can actually impact you a little bit more abruptly. So just kind of a heads up. I know I've had some clients in the past that have had to deal with that and deal with SAD, to where they actually ended up moving back because they just couldn't do it. They didn't realize how much of an impact it did have. So they had to come back to where it was a little bit more sunny. But again, it's a very real thing. And, you know, if you haven't figured it out yet, I definitely talk a lot about mental health because it is so important. And it's definitely a part of your overall health. You know, it's a huge bucket in that overall health. And I don't hesitate to talk about it on podcasts. I even talk about my own therapy sessions on my podcast. Um, Not every detail, but like things that I'm able to share more freely and be vulnerable with everyone, because I think it's important, and I think that we shouldn't necessarily uh, treat it as like a taboo topic. All right. So if any of you are all struggling at any point, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a mental health practitioner. I do, of course, have a wide network. I'm happy to refer folks to, I'm happy to refer to even my therapist if you want to. But I have several therapists in the area, Denver metro area, as well as other areas across the US and Canada, should you ever need a resource. Okay. And if you don't have one, if I don't have one in your neck of the woods, then I can find someone, because they usually have their online therapy networks that they can actually ask for referrals, which is pretty cool. So let me know, but always reach out and just be like, hey, you know, Jen, I'm kind of just having a little bit of a shitty week, or I'm feeling a little bit down or something like that, just so I know. Because again, I can't really talk you through it. It's out of my scope of practice, but I can at least encourage and be there for you and maybe talk through some things that I can possibly just communicate with you about. Because sometimes it's just nice to also just talk and say it out loud. All right. So I'm going to step off my soapbox about mental health, because again, just this time of year can be really impactful for people with the time change and everything like that. All right. So much love to everyone. Thanks for the heartbreak, but it's true. And I try to not make it a taboo topic. So, all right. So some things that we did talk about in the group chat, just to kind of do a quick little summary here in the beginning, and then we can kind of open it up to Q&A, and then get into maybe some coaching topics that maybe you all wanted to talk about, or some struggles that you all are having, if you want to share it with the group. You can also, if you want, message me in the chat box any questions that you have, if you want it to be private, but make sure that you're not doing it to all participants. If it is a private topic, do it just to me. So I'm just going to make that clear, because I know sometimes technology can get a little in the way for some of us, especially non-millennials. I guess I'm an elder millennial, or no, I'm X, what is it? The X gen. I guess I'm technically X gen. I'm like right on the border. Okay. So the habit of working out and really just building a habit in general. It can take some time and practice and patience and persistence. So hang in there. But the first thing when it comes to, let's just talk about working out in particular. I talked about at least identifying 2 to 3 days, but at least two. Let's start with at least 2 days where you can sneak in just 10 minutes, like just 10 minutes. It doesn't have to be the full 45 minutes or so, or even 30 minutes, but just 10 minutes of movement. And you can do one of the core workouts that I have in the program, or you can do the body weight workouts if you're like, Jen, I don't really want to sling any weight. That was pretty much me after I did Staunton the other day, because that was my first time doing Staunton. And I have to admit, for those of you who live in the Denver area, I've been wanting to explore this trail for a while, and I remember it being climby. Like I remember reading about it being climby, but I just didn't look it up. Like before I met my friend, and let's just say there were some curse words that were said, because again, if you don't know, I had a torn quad earlier this year, so I have not been climbing very much. So yeah, it was it was fun type 2. It was type 2 fun rather. So after that, I was planning on doing the squat workout on Sunday because I had a gravel ride on Saturday and the ride on Sun was Friday. Let's just say I just did body weight and very light goblet squats on Sunday in my upper body workout. So please know, I just minimized it. Like I even minimized some of the workouts based on how my body feels, because I have to respect how I'm feeling right now, because I'm getting back into biking more and adding a lot more mileage than I'm used to doing. So I have to kind of respect that. And I have a little bit of pent up biking stuff because I haven't really been able to bike as much as I'd like to. So I personally, for my mental health, back to that, and what makes me happy and brings me joy, I want to get in more bike rides. And I wanted to explore some trails that I was hoping to explore earlier this season. So that meant that I'm just going to minimize some of my weight training. And it doesn't mean that I'm going to be like missing on strength or anything. I have all winter to increase my strength. So I'm not worried about that at all. I'm worried about right now and how I'm feeling. Okay. So I identified a couple weeks. I highly recommend that you identify a couple days rather each week. You can get at least 10 minutes moving in. Make that your bargaining chip. Just 10 minutes moving. Then schedule it in, try to add it to your calendar if you can, block it out if you can. If you're especially a remote individual, you work remotely. I've worked remotely for over 15 years. So even pre-pandemic. So I was in corporate doing research. If you didn't know about my past life, I did research for like 12 years. And when you're remote, sometimes people just kind of expect you to just be sitting at home, not doing anything. And then sometimes your boss will just slide a meeting request in. So I totally know what that's like. So I usually recommend like blocking out your calendar if you can, because they'll see it usually on Outlook. And most of the time, if you have a reasonable boss, they'll respect it. All right. So that's why I always say, like, literally put it in your calendar if you can, because it'll block it out. And once you block it out and you schedule it, the chances of getting it done is a lot higher. All right. It's a lot higher. Of course, things can happen. Kids can happen. Illnesses can happen. Things like that. Like things happen, but just be flexible. And that's why I always have like some of these core workouts, or of course the body weight workouts, things like that. That way you can kind of play around with it. The other thing that I also recommend is just movement snacks. Movement snacks are completely feasible. I will go ahead and say that if you are lifting a little bit heavier weights, especially in the barbell program or things like that, please just make sure you warm up and do at least like a couple minutes just to kind of get your blood flowing, whether it's something silly, but jumping jacks, or if you have like a bike trainer, you can hop on the bike for a little bit, or just go outside for a little bit of a jog or a jog, as I call it, because I don't really run very fast anymore, but just enough to kind of warm you up and elevate your heart rate a little bit before you start to get into a little bit of the movements that mimic whatever heavier movement you're doing. Okay. So that's my only caveat, is just make sure that you warm up before you actually get into lifting a little bit heavier weight. Be safe, be reasonable if you're doing movement snacks. But I'm really big on, with the supersets, you can go ahead and break them out into movement snacks if you want. You can always do the warm up snack which is I always kind of label it in instructions with warm up. You can do that separately. It usually takes about 10 to 12 minutes tops. And then from there, that's the main lift or some of the movement patterns that mimic the main lift, especially if you're in the barbell program. Then you can do that as a movement snack. And then you can do the actual main lift, which is like the squats or the deadlifts or the pressing or things like that as the next movement snack. And then there's usually a last superset, which will be the final movement snack that you can do. But generally, they always usually take about 10 minutes each, roughly. And of course, it all depends on, especially if you're in the barbell program, it will take you a little bit longer just because loading and unloading the barbells just takes longer. And also just lifting, a little bit more weight with the barbell can take longer. Okay, so just consider that. Now, with that, please don't think that if you're doing a movement snack, you're getting less of a workout. It's not really the case. More and more studies are actually showing that it's actually pretty good for you to move throughout the day, especially if you're a little bit more desk-bound individual. The other thing too is to think about the timing of the workouts. So I know a lot of you lately have been getting in these morning workouts because you're like, it is the only time I can do it. Once the kids go to school, like I am in the gym, or some of the folks don't have kids. I'm just doing the gym before I get into work. And that's totally fine. Whatever works for you. I'm not going to tell you that, oh, morning's better than afternoon or evening or anything like that. Honestly, the best time to work out is the time that works best for you. All right. For me, my times are all over the place. Like if you follow me on Strava, they're literally all over the place because it depends on when I have client calls, when I'm actually coaching physically at the gym, because I'm not completely online, because then I would be a very weird person and I would be socially awkward. So I do like to coach in person at the gym once to twice a week, just so I can have personal interaction, because I'm a very extroverted individual. So I need that again for mental health. I need to have some sort of interaction with people, or else I get a little weird. And I'm just going to admit that. So let's just say the first few months of quarantine I got a little weird, but it's very important. So my schedule for working out depends on those things. Like I have kind of a loose schedule, but I also do tend to have pockets of when I can work out. So if that makes you feel any better, hopefully it does. But really, only the best time to work out is the best time for you. All right. Third step, so first identify the couple of days that you can get in at least 10 minutes of working out. If you can do more than 10 minutes, great. That's a bonus. Second step is once you decide what days, schedule it. All right, put it in there. The third step is to change your clothes or do something. Start warming up, especially this time of year, or especially when it does get a little colder. Like my garage gym, when it's cold outside, it can get really cold in there. And of course, everything's metal. So the barbell's metal. I don't wear gloves. My dumbbells are metal because they're the Hex dumbbells. So it just hurts. And it doesn't feel very good. And we don't really have a very strong heater out there. So I change my clothes and I have to start warming up. Because I'm going to talk myself out of going out there. And the more I talk myself out of going out there to work out, just the worse it'll feel. All right. So just try to get moving. Just try to get moving. But I usually start with just changing my clothes, or I always, especially if it's a morning workout and you are doing a morning workout, have the clothes set out, have your bottle of water ready to go. Your shoes laid out. I know it sounds silly and it only takes a minute the night before, but you laying in bed, just knowing that you only have to get out of bed, which is the hardest part, I know. But knowing that you only have to get out of bed to put on your clothes, maybe have some water, go to the bathroom, and then get to the gym, that is a lot more accessible for a lot of us to consider doing than thinking, oh, I've got to pick what I want to wear. And I know it sounds silly, but a lot of habit coaches have talked about that over the years, because it makes a big difference. And then, just take action, really, whatever it is, just take some sort of action, because really the action is kind of taking some sort of action is what will help with the motivation or feeling a little bit more motivated to do it. All right. And then last but not least, what I added on last Friday was the idea of remembering your why. You know, it sounds cheesy and a little bit motivational speaker-esque, and it is, but there's a reason for it because I think oftentimes even I have to remember why I started. You know, why am I doing this? My biggest thing that I always remind myself is, Jen, remember how you're going to feel afterwards. You know, that's for me, I think the big thing is that I just feel so much better. I feel like taller, which for me, if you've ever met me in person, I'm like 5'2". So I'm like the tiniest person, but like I will take any type of anything to make me feel bigger, you know, any type of height improvement here. But it just makes me feel taller, both emotionally and physically and things like that. Makes me feel better, makes me feel a little bit more energized for the rest of my day, or whatever I have planned for the rest of the day. So that's something that maybe will help inspire you all to kind of think about what's your why. And from clients over the years, I've heard whys, their whys be ranging from, I just want to be able to play with my kid and be able-bodied for them. Like, I don't even care about how I am on my bike. I mean, sometimes people do, but like, I've literally heard mountain bikers say, I just want to be able-bodied for my kid. You know, like, I just want to feel good for the next 20 years and be able to do anything that they need me to do. And on up to folks taking care of their parents and things like that. Oops, let me admit, Rebecca. Folks taking care of their parents. I know that's a big motivation for me. You know, my mom, if you don't know, she's bedbound. She has MS. She's had it for about 20 years. And it's one of those situations that even though she lives in Florida, it's one of those situations where I always want to be able to take care of her, you know, and my dad's her caretaker and they're both 73. So it's a little bit of a comedy of errors for them. But that's a big motivation for me. And my mom's not really able to do a lot of things, you know. For various reasons, you know, medically speaking and things like that. So I always just want to remember that not everyone kind of gets that granted. So I try not to take it for granted. But again, maybe that's motivation for you all to kind of reflect on who in your life is really inspirational for you and that you want to be there for. All right. So sometimes it's not always about us, it's about other people and who we want to be there for. But remembering your why, step number 4, it's huge. Now, the last one that I haven't shared yet on in the app chat is when you encounter obstacles, because obstacles are going to happen, all right, determine what the root cause is, if there is one, all right. Get curious about like, oh crap, it's Friday, I have not worked it out at all this week. Like, what is it my sleep? Have I maybe just not hydrated enough, you know, and I'm kind of feeling like low energy? Have I been skipping lunch? That's a popular one I hear. I've been skipping lunch at work because, you know, things get busy and I just want to hammer out one more email and do one more task. And then before I know it, it's like 3 p.m. and then I'm hungry and I'm going to eat my hand and I'm not going to work out. And I'm saying these from experience too. So it's not only from like clients telling me and athletes telling me over the years, but I've experienced these as well. Get curious. That's the fifth and final one here is just get curious. What maybe were the obstacles? If you do notice a little bit of pattern, feel free to shoot me a message in the app. We can kind of talk through it, and you know, figure something out. But yeah, that's the big thing. Those are the top 5. Again, identify a couple of days just to get in 10 minutes in of movement in, and then once you figure out what 2 days you want to do it, schedule it, block it on your calendar, and then step number 3, take some sort of action. Change your clothes, do something. If you're feeling low and motivated, not motivated. I will say the exception here is, of course, if you're like sick, you know, like individuals are getting the flu right now and or COVID, you know, things like that, things that are going around. Respect that, please. I'm not one of these coaches that's like, no, you got to go hard. No, please give yourself a space to rest and recover. Maybe do the unwind, like the post bike ride unwind, even though you're not biking. It still feels really good to kind of move your body, but do something. So I'm not trying to like rah, 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 do everything and like change your clothes and start warming up. Like, you're going to know when there's a difference of you doing the self-talk of like, I'm tired, I don't feel like it, versus, oh, I'm actually not feeling really well. Or maybe it's that time of the month, you know, if you're a menstruating individual. Because I know, you know, that can happen too for a couple of folks. So respect that and know the difference between like, I don't feel like it, I'm tired, versus, oh no, I'm actually like, it's not good. I slept 5 hours last night. My kid's sick. maybe I'll just do a body weight workout. But do take some sort of action if you're in that one park, like that one group of people that you're like, I just don't feel like working out because I'm tired. Try to take some sort of action. Okay. Change your clothes, warm up. Fourth, remember your why. And then fifth, get curious about any obstacles that you encounter. All right. Cool. So that was about 25 minutes or so. Actually, I guess less than that. Yeah, 22 minutes. If you have any questions about building habits, let me know. You can raise your hand. You can also just unmute. There's nothing formal here because it's such a small group. Right now, I know I got a lot of messages of people not able to make it. You can ask me any questions. Thanks, Bree. I appreciate that. If you don't have any questions about developing habits, then ask me any questions you might have about the program, like what's my mad scientist's, approach to things. If you want me to kind of explain it a little bit more and why I keep the volume the way it is, I will go ahead and say after this first cycle ends, which will be after next week, you're going to have separate finishers, which are going to be like little tiny, like 5-minute, 10-minute finishers. And these are actually fun to do. And they're just going to be enough to kind of elevate your heart rate a little bit. And you can move them around. I'm going to have them separate. So separate from the strength, so you can move them around on your calendar. But I will put them after the preferred strength day. But you can also move them around, and it's kind of nice because sometimes a little hit session or like a little finisher session to elevate your heart rate is another way to feel good when like the snow starts flying or, it's dark out. we're going to have the time change too here in a couple of weeks. Not to burst anyone's bubble, but that means mornings will be brighter, but evenings will be darker. So go for it, Rebecca.
All right. So for me, like getting in oh gosh, like usually what you're scheduling for Wednesdays, like the intervals, like that's a struggle bus for me just because I'm able to it's easier for me to schedule, like to go do a quick weight workout amongst the remote home day, even though I'm very close to South Table. But then I look like a tomato for the rest of the day if I go and do like hardcore exercise. So it's really a on Zoom. So, and I also don't have an indoor trainer. So like, what would you recommend as kind of an option for that? Like, especially as we get colder with cycling, all of that, like, I don't have any, like,
yeah. The finishers will actually help complement that because not everyone has an indoor trainer or anything like that. So just to be realistic, that's another reason why I'm like, okay, it's wintertime. Like, let's go ahead and do these separate finishers,
okay.
Which are kind of like just short, sweet, little hits of exercise. And excuse me. And it's one of those situations that can help because generally what I'm trying to elicit, oh, sorry, buddy. Sorry, let me just step on my dog. What I'm trying to elicit is just your ability to recover a little bit better, so we're trying to do an elevated heart rate, generally speaking. Of course, there are going to be like climbing days and things like that with intervals, but I'm trying to just elicit higher elevated heart rate rather, followed by a little bit of a down heart rate. And that just helps you over time with recovery. Milo, stop. Sorry, he's looking like crazy. We just bathed him the other day, so he's like not having it. He wants his hair a certain way. He's a cat dog, but generally like the finishers can help with that, where you're going to have some built-in rest, usually 30 seconds, maybe even a minute between some sort of efforts. And that can help, again, just elicit that recovery response. The other thing, do you have any type of cardio equipment, like even a rower, elliptical? No. Okay. I was going to say, really, you can sub it with anything.
Like I got weights and I'm feeling good with that.
So no, that's fine. That's fine.
Place, because right now is definitely a good time to find it all. I find people are exercise equipment.
They just turned into like clothes racks or something. Because that's the other thing that I have folks do. Like I even have a private client that, she has an elliptical and she's in Summit. So like they already got hammered with snow. And she doesn't quite want to get into fat biking right now. So she's just on the elliptical. She loves the elliptical. And she's a top gravel athlete, So trust me, like as long as you're doing some sort of elevated heart rate followed by whatever type of interval, that can really help a lot. I joke, I don't think I put it in the instructions this time, how I joked about how like the only thing I ask is don't do the intervals with a jumping rope, because your calves will like, if you're not, unless you're like a professional jump roper and you're an experienced jump roper and you do it regularly, then your body's used to it. But if you're not, it could really just make your calves hurt a lot if you're doing intervals on the jump rope. So that's the only thing I don't ask that you do.
Okay.
Yeah, no, don't do that.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, like I need to just, it might be one of those where I might like figure out how to do that maybe first thing in the morning after kiddo goes to school.
Yes.
If I think with daylight savings change, that'll help.
Yeah. And it's
then
tough too with the weather.
Too. I mean, honestly, like, yeah.
Yeah. It's tough too with the weather because South Table would be great,
It actually a great one for the winter, especially doing intervals. Yeah.
Yeah, because it doesn't hold the snow as much and it doesn't get a lot of snow usually. Oh my God, knock on wood, right? But I will say like those type of places, even some of the dirt roads at Green Mountain are great. There's a great little the climbing. So there's a trail. It's literally a double wide, like a double wide. What am I talking about? It's double track, not a double wide trailer. It's a double track. But it's the one right next to Boxer Rocks that goes up. That is like, and it's from the Rooney parking lot for those of you that live in the Denver area, which I think is actually all of you. Oh, I can't remember. No, I was like, Robin, I don't think you do though. Where do you live again, Robin?
In Iowa.
Okay, that's right. I was like, I don't think so. And a couple others, but still, so just finding a dirt road for or like a gravel road, that has a little bit of elevation for the climbing intervals that we'll get into a little bit later in the season. Things like that, it works as long as you're kind of doing a little bit more pedaling and kind of mimicking what it is. But I will say like the 40-20s, the 40-20 intervals that we're doing right now, they increase a little bit every week. So make sure you read the instructions, just increase by 1 usually. They are the standard bike interval that you'll get in almost every program really out there, no matter who the coach is, because they're a bear, they're a bear. They help with that recovery, with the shorter recovery periods, which is nice. Cause usually it's like 1-to-1 ratio of like, 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off. And that's actually pretty doable, but it's that extra, like spicy 20 seconds on the 40 and then a reduced 20-second recovery. And I do that on purpose because sometimes people are like, wow, I actually see and feel the difference that much quicker with this type of series. I know I do personally as well, but yeah, the intervals, and they vary, but there will be a period of a few weeks, several weeks where we are doing the 40-20s, and then we'll get into a little bit more of like longer duration, just kind of like pedaling out a little bit more. But yeah, but do the finishers, Rebecca, that should help. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Any other questions? No? Everyone feeling good? Yeah, good. That makes me happy. I did deadlift day today. And I did it. So I went into the gym, like not our garage gym. I went to a gym because I was like, I need people and I need to get out of the house today. And my friend Melissa was actually coaching the CrossFit workout that day. And I personally, I know a lot of people have opinions of CrossFit, but like I've been doing it on and off for like past 10, 11 years, 12 years. Oh God, I don't even remember how long. I guess it's been 11 or 12 years now. And it's one of those things, I don't do it every day because that's just too much volume. That's too much intensity for me, coupled with mountain biking. All right. Especially as a 43-year-old woman, I need to respect my recovery. And, but I walked in and of course I love our gym because the owners are also around my age. So their programming is just right. Like they program just right for general population. of course I walk in today and it's like a pull up workout with knee raises, like leg raises, and some sprints mixed in. And I was like, actually, this is perfect. This is exactly what I need. Because it kind of mimics, it took me 14 minutes to do it, and it mimicked kind of a nice little finisher. So it was a nice thing to do. But I went in and I wasn't expecting to do a CrossFit workout. But then I started talking to my friend Melissa, and I'm like, great, I got roped in. But it helps too, because it gives me some ideas, and just kind of what feels good and what doesn't feel good in terms of finishers, things like that. But all right. I try to temper the volume, especially right now because we are kind of still riding as much as we can in most places. There are also plenty of people in the group that are in Arizona, New Mexico, and places like that where, California, dang you people, you can ride year round. Generally speaking, we can also ride year round here in Colorado. It just kind of depends, like sometimes we just need to wait for things to melt once the snow starts to hit. So I try to temper it a little bit right now because we're a little bit in the shoulder season. And then volume will pick up usually in the dead of winter and be a little bit more strength focused, just so you all kind of know where we're going. But it will be a little bit more, possibly even like lower reps, especially if you're in the barbell program. You're going to be getting into a little bit of a heavier weight once you're comfortable. I just try to establish a lot of the baseline, because there's been plenty of times where I've even followed other people's programs and it's just a lot too soon. And I try to temper that with easing into things a little bit more slowly. So yeah, the first 4 to 6 weeks are going to feel like, okay, what are we doing? Especially if you're an accomplished, lifter and you're experienced. But there is a method behind it, because I feel like all too often, sometimes some of these programs can start off a little too aggressively. And I'd rather you feel better in going a little bit slower at first and get that foundation established. And then we can kind of ramp things up a little bit more. All right. But yeah, and don't worry, things won't get that crazy. But there are some unique movements where people are, I know a lot of people comment like, holy hell, I actually have not done this before. And it's good. And a lot of my stuff is core centric, because if you have a strong core, that carries really well on the bike, and it helps with like low back stuff. If you have some low back stuff, which I do, I have a history of low back stuff from before I knew what I was doing. And yeah, I just try to pay keen attention to that, and having a strong core can help. Bree.
Yeah, I actually had a question about that.
Yeah.
So I noticed that the core exercises aren't necessarily built into our program, but we do have the option to add them in. Do you have any recommendations for folks who maybe like yourself should be doing a little more than they are because of back problems as well?
Yeah, actually, the stuff I have programmed right now, 100% are really good. Now, of course, right now I'm just starting off with like arms only, bird dog, for example, and things like that, just to kind of gradually get you there. But I actually did an article for ACE a year or two ago. I'm gonna have to find it, because there are 3 key movements that can actually really help. Just based on some back research. And of course, there's always going to need to be more research. But bird dog is really good, especially when you're really holding tension. Like for me, when I'm doing bird dog, sorry, buddy, hold on. When I'm doing the bird dog, I make fists. Not because I'm mad, but I'm just trying to like get so much tension when I'm like really trying to reach it. Because you can, of course, just do a bird dog, like, okay, this is great. But when you really get some tension, it can add some slowness to the movement, but it can also really add intention to it. So tension builds intention with the movement, and it helps with that mind muscle connection, so bird dog is really great. Any type of glute bridges are usually fantastic, especially if you're focusing on not overextending your back when you're doing the glute bridge. Like, okay, I'm at the top of my glute bridge and I'm doing this, and which is good. I mean, you're building the muscles there, because they are spinal erector muscles that are really important. But sometimes we can kind of overdo it, because like for me, if you've ever noticed me in person, like my body, I'm just butt. Like I've got that, and because of that, I have a lordotic spine, right? Because That's just kind of how I stand, which, you know, this is a little bit more neutral, right? Instead of like how I normally stand. It's a work in progress, okay? um, but because of that, that is generally what causes like my back issues, because I just kind of let loose a little bit, you know. And I don't like engage my core as much. So I'm definitely intentional with that. So when you emphasize that when you're doing like glute bridges and things like that, then it can kind of aggravate it. So that's why I usually put like in the instructions, like, you know, try to like tilt your pelvis just a little bit. And it's gonna feel, you're gonna feel weird. You're gonna feel like you're actually not in the right position, but this is actually gonna be more in the right position than this. If you see the difference. And it feels weird at first. Like I deadlifted in front of my PT today. And I could feel his eyeballs because he was at the gym and he was just like, okay, because it's something we're working on with my lower back. So keeping an eye on that will help, Bree, in terms of making sure you kind of bring your like lower ribs down to your hips and things like that. Just like a little mini sit up that can help kind of stabilize your core a little bit, which will stabilize your back a little bit. But keeping an eye on that with glute bridges, that'll help. And then even just like while you're standing, like I have a stand desk. And if you stand a lot, or maybe when you're standing and cooking dinner or things like that, just even practicing while you're standing of like tucking your tailbone under a little bit and doing that mini sit up, and just bringing some intention behind how you're presenting yourself. That can help, and how you're carrying yourself. But yeah, that can help with low back stuff. So can the McGill Big Three. Stu McGill is one of the big, he's a famous researcher, especially with back health. And, you know, some folks I will say, like, say, yes, like he is kind of the baseline for back research, low back health. And he is. But sometimes even the best researchers can kind of get a little bit stuck in their way. So please know I'm a big proponent. Oh, hi, buddy. Big proponent of Stu McGill's work, Dr. McGill's work. But I think there's also other things that we can do too. So if you look at the McGill Big Three, his real big thing, whoops, hold on. His big thing is, and I actually did this article on this, and his big thing is like doing, whoops, I misspelled it. I'm gonna try to see if I can find, of course, Squat University did this article. He's a PT. And that was a good eye roll. Like that was a, like, of course he did an article on this already. That was not like a negative eye roll, but he has a good video about it, and he's a PT as well. And I know Squat University can sometimes be a little, like, I really like him a lot, but I will say sometimes he can be a little, again, set in his ways, and sometimes a little bit stubborn to kind of change as things evolve. But again, I really think that he lays a good baseline there. I just shared the article there, and I kind of wonder if I could find my article, because I actually do have some, oh, did I? Yes. And I actually included 6 exercises. It's funny, I forget some of the stuff that I did do. I do talk about the Big Three, which is of course the McGill curl up, which you'll see. And it's kind of like a mini crunch, like you're just doing a little mini thing, but you're driving that low back into the ground. So we're really trying to neutralize that spine a little bit. And then of course a side bridge, and then a bird dog. So those are going to be the McGill Big Three. But if you kind of want to nerd out and read some of this stuff, there's that. And then I expanded upon the McGill Big Three, because I mean, it's great. It's a great start, but there's also some other things that you can do. And they included the damn wrong bird dog video. I don't like the way I did my bird dog, because this is how I did my bird dog like 8 years ago or something. And they still included that article or that video in there, but you'll see some videos for me doing that. And then I also included 3 exercises to do for knee pain too. in that article. So there's 3 exercises for low back stuff, which is the McGill Big 3, and then exercises for knee pain, which sometimes some of this stuff can actually help with the low back stuff. And I did that intentionally. I'll shut up because I can talk about this forever, but maybe explore those links. But the big thing is just be aware of how you're carrying yourself. And, you don't have to be strict about things like, oh, I have awful, like, don't beat yourself up and, say like, I have awful low back positioning right now while I'm cooking dinner or eating or whatever. It's fine. Things happen. Like we get comfortable. Like we've been at a desk all day, some of us, and we just kind of look for comfort. But just be aware, just bring awareness to how you are presenting yourself in space during most of your day. And that can help a lot, Brie. And then just bring awareness to your position with your low back, and then doing some of this core workout, because a lot of the stuff that I develop is with, my PT and a lot of input from him and other PTs that I just study under. And because I don't have the luxury of having gone to PT school. And it's one of those situations where I'm just trying to learn as much as I can, that things that'll help with stability first and really grooving that, getting stable, getting everyone stable as we can make them. And then going from there, like, great, let's build on a little bit more strength and hypertrophy and building some more muscle. And then let's get into a little bit more power building, which we'll do before spring hits. So, but I want to lay the foundation. That's my big thing. Hopefully that helps, Brie.
That's super helpful. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And I am 43. I know I act like I'm 15, but
I cannot believe that. My mind is just blown.
Genetics. It's all genetics. And I'm short. So like, I think people automatically are just like, oh, you're like so much younger. It's one of those things. But yes, genetics. And I have pretty good genetics from.
And you take amazing care of yourself, which you're teaching
Thanks.
us all to do. So
Hydration. I'm telling you, hydration. Like I cannot emphasize this enough, especially in this dry climate here in Colorado. It is so important. Of course, don't overhydrate because you can also do that. But yeah, I try to stay hydrated as best as I can. But yeah, that'll help. And I have really oily skin because of just my heritage. So little Latina. So it's just very oily. But can't tell because I have the blondish hair. But yeah, if you look at my dad, you'll see. It's very olive complexion, very oily. So yeah. Plus don't take things so seriously too. I'm real big on that. I try to laugh a lot. So yeah, it makes things a lot better. It gives you extra like crow's feet and laugh lines, but I will embrace them. I love them. That's just a map to how much I've laughed, right? Oh, doggo, Rebecca.
This is
Mine left.
Chrissy.
Oh, is it a doodle?
She's a doodle. Here, I don't.
Yeah.
Hi,
Pumpkin.
Yep. Hey, please don't hurt that.
All I see is a tail.
Okay. Yeah, it was just being sporadic. So yeah.
No, you're good. You're good. Anyone else have any questions? Robin, anything? If you, yay.
That's part of the reason I've had to keep going offline because she's being kind of hyper tonight. But
Is your dog being needy as well?
yeah.
You're like, excuse me, I would like 1 attentions, please. Milo, when I talk, because I always feel like I'm not talking loud enough sometimes, especially when I'm not wearing my mic and things like that in my ear, he's just like, okay, I'm out. Like he just walked out like a couple minutes ago. He's like, I'm done. You're Mom. I'm done. Well, sweet. Well, thanks for joining. And seriously, if you ever have any questions, I am only a message away. As you know, I do step away over the weekends just so I can kind of, refresh myself. But I'll always get back to you first thing on Monday as soon as I can. But yeah, let me know if you ever have any questions. Oh my God, stop it. Sorry, Robin. I'm paying attention, but I get so distracted by like kiddos and dogs, especially dogs. Just
My
because-
camera's not working. Otherwise, I would show my doodle too.
Oh, darn. That's okay, Shannon. You can message me a picture at any point in the app if you don't mind. I love dogs. I'm like the weirdo that if I ever go to a house party or a gathering, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love talking to people and things like that, engaging with humans, but I always usually gravitate towards the dog. Yeah, I'm that weirdo. Yeah. Anyways, on that note, I'm gonna exit my weird butt out of here. Thanks again for joining, and I hope you all have a beautiful night. And again, let me know if you have any questions. Next week, we're going to be increasing the intensity just a little bit, and that'll be the final week in this in the series, 4-week series. And then we'll get into a little bit more. We'll get into different movements. A couple of them will still be the same because we still want to develop those hinging patterns and things like that. So you'll notice a couple of them will stay the same. It's usually going to be the main movement, and then everything else will change. Not too much, but everything else will kind of change. That way you don't get bored, because I don't want you to get bored, because that can happen. It happens with me too. So, all right. Excellent. Thanks for joining, everyone. And Milo and I
Thank
say hi, even though he's out of the room. All right. Bye.
Bye.